Hey, it's Kaufman is Alive. I look at comic books new and old. Today I'm looking at AEW Origins by DC Comics. I thought this was a good time to look at this since AEW just put on the Full Gear pay-per-view this past weekend that was sponsored by DC. And I think comic books and wrestling make a good combination. We've seen it recently with Do a Powerbomb, Daniel Warren Johnson's series that was all about pro wrestling. And we've seen it done not as well in the Venom War series by Marvel, which crossed over Venom with some pro wrestling. And of course, Spider-Man always wanted to be a pro wrestler. That was his first profession. Peter Parker, after he became Spider-Man, he took his powers and tried to become a pro wrestler. So I think it always works. And if you remember back in the late 90s too, Chaos Comics put out those WWF comics like The Undertaker. And I thought those were pretty good. So I'm really interested to see what DC is going to do in a couple months when they start releasing some AEW-centric comics. And we've seen some covers recently as well in the DC KO series that have crossed over AEW and the DC characters on the cover. Like there was a Lobo, Hangman Adam Page cover, for instance, in the #1 issue. So this came out earlier this year, 2025. It was actually free at my comic shop with a purchase. It's written by Steve Orlando. There's 6 different stories, and he's the writer on all of them. Ricardo Lopez Ortiz and Hi-Fi do the cover here. And they kind of take all of the images from the cover of all these characters and split them up into the different stories and kind of use them to separate each of the stories here with each of the characters. So there's a Darby Allin story. We've got Swerve Strickland, Britt Baker, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, excuse me, Orange Cassidy, the aerial assassin Will Ospreay, and Timeless Tony Storm. They each get their own little origin stories here. And they're each drawn by different artists. We've got the Swerve Strickland story first. He says the House of Strickland. But we get their origins. In this one, for Swerve, it talks about how he was in the army, but it just wasn't right for him. His sergeant wanted off-the-books mercenaries, it says, not soldiers. So he took his skills to the wrestling ring, and he says he bleeds his enemies dry because he loves it. And I'll be honest, the writing in all these stories isn't all that great. It's kind of hit and miss. There's some funny stuff in here. There's some kind of corny stuff in here as well. We get the Sarge here, who's an obvious homage to Sergeant Slaughter from G.I. Joe and obviously WWF from the 80s and 90s. But Swerve tells Nana to hold the belt here, so we get a little appearance from Prince Nana on this panel. And Swerve attacks his old Sarge here, who says he's too good. Sarge says Swerve's too good to get his hands dirty, which offends Swerve. So he gives him the Swerve stomp here. He says, "You're wrong, Sarge. These hands are filthy as hell. But it's not dirt, it's tears, sweat, and blood." So again, not the best writing, but we get a AEW Collision ad here. And Timeless Tony Storm gets the next story. "Chin up and watch for the shoe," she says. She forgot the tits out part, but she actually says it here at the end of this story where she says, "It's chin up, tits out, and watch for the shoe." But this story explains Tony Storm's origin. Talks about how the icons from the golden age of Hollywood never abandoned her. But pretty much everyone else in her life had always abandoned her. We even get a little cameo here from, I guess it's supposed to be like Paige and Ruby Soho, when they were all the outcasts and spraying the paint on Timeless Tony Storm's face there on the bottom panel down there. And then everything goes into black and white when she becomes timeless. So I do like the touch of that. On this page, it's kind of in color. obviously, except for the black and white TV shows that she's watching and movies. And then on this page, it's all in black and white. And we get a little cameo here, unfortunately, by an unnamed Thunder Rosa on these pages. But you can tell it's Thunder Rosa. She's got the half face paint there. But unfortunately, lifer, AEW Day 1 lifer, Thunder Rosa didn't get her own origin story here. But I got to wonder what some of the wrestlers would think when you're just an unnamed jobber in a comic book like this, when you've been there since day one. Not getting the push here is old Thunder Rosa, but we get the Will Ospreay, the aerial assassin story here. I actually like the artwork in this one. Let me see who this artist is. I didn't call out the artists in each issue. We got Edwin Gallman did the Swerve story. Laura Braga did the Timeless Tony Storm artwork in that story. We got Leonardo Rodriguez in doing the Will Ospreay story. So this story is just Will Ospreay actually learns all these different fighting styles from traveling all over the world, which is actually kind of his origin in real life. But they kind of exaggerate it, taking it a step further here, saying that Will Ospreay was actually trained as an assassin, but he just couldn't take that next step to actually kill people. So he took all of his skills back to the professional wrestling ring, which was his first arena, it says. And he never forgot his vow. It's to stand up for judgment. He was an assassin, but not of men, of egos and delusions, of the impossible. And then at the very last panel here, it says, "Ladies and gentlemen, he may not take lives, but Will Ospreay is always killing it." Which is just so corny. But kind of a cool little origin story there for Will Ospreay. We get a Absolute Wonder Woman ad, and then we've got Britt Baker, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. She gets her own little story here. Now, she hasn't even been in AEW for like a year. So, very interesting that she was the one chosen here, again, over someone like Thunder Rosa, who is, I think, still around. But anyway, Dr. Britt Baker, she is one of my favorites in the AEW women's roster. So I do like her getting singled out for her own story here. I just wish she would come back to wrestling. But not much to this story here. It's pretty much just saying, hey, she's a wrestler and she's a dentist, and she is somehow able to manage both of those professions, despite how different they are. They show her with the Owen Hart Foundation belt there that she won, the very first Owen Hart Foundation tournament. They've got her using her finishing move here, the lockjaw. But not too much to this one. This is Laura Braga doing the artwork on that story there. We get a shopaew.com ad. Pretty cool looking ad though, with everyone in the comic book here. We get the Orange Cassidy, freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. I kind of like this story too, because it gives us an actual origin for this character and who this guy is. It says Orange Cassidy doesn't overthink it, never has. He went where his whim led him, doing whatever, until one day fate tripped him. Fate and the perfect pair of shades. And then on the bottom of the bag, there's also a card for a wrestling gym. So he just wanders into the wrestling gym and starts wrestling here. We get this random group of best friends, they call it here, including a guy who looks suspiciously kind of like Danhausen, and a ninja, and someone who kind of looks like Starfire, but and a kangaroo randomly, which I think that was Matt Hardy's gimmick. But so it says, when those friends were attacked from within, Cassidy's world was shattered. A man who'd do anything, challenge anyone, no matter the risk, to defend his family. And that's pretty cool, or whatever. So I like this one. This was probably my favorite little story in here of all of them. The Orange Cassidy origin, and Serge Acuna is the artist there. Then we get the Darby Allin story, Living to Die. Here it says, I think Darby Allin, of all of these characters, is the one who would fit most perfectly into a comic book as a comic book character, with his look and just his underdog kind of persona, and his just recklessness, the reckless persona that he's got. And this origin's cool too. Like all the others I was talking about, it is kind of based on real life from the story that Darby's told, where his uncle was in a car wreck that took his life and Darby was in the car with him. So it says he saw how fast a normal life could be stolen. And so he turned his back on it, existed on the fringes, began to fight everybody until a man called Sting, an icon, a vigilante, a mentor, pulled Darby from the underworld and offered him another way. So kind of explaining that Sting was the one who brought Darby into professional wrestling, which isn't exactly true, but it works for this comic book origin story. I think we get the Butcher making a little appearance as a jobber here in this comic book as well. From the Butcher and the Blade. Another guy who hasn't been in AEW in a long time. And Sting making his first appearance here in a comic book since I think the early 90s in those WCW comics that were published by Marvel, I believe. But another guy who makes a perfect comic book character, in my opinion, the Crow Sting or Surfer Sting. This story is drawn by Pop Vaughn, and the entire comic, the letters are by Josh Reed, and Michael McAllister is the editor. But it says he's still picking fights, not just with men, but with nature itself. He stares it down and doesn't blink. So I like that they're also referencing the fact that Darby climbed Mount Everest recently. It says he risks it all to prove what, despite the world's best efforts, he's not just half dead, he's half alive. Again, kind of a corny ending to this little story. I think the writing here leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's all just funny stuff. It's all just wrestling and comic books. It's not to be taken too seriously. But we get an ad for AEW Dynamite here. Kind of outdated. We got Mariah May here, who's the current NXT Women's North American Champion. And we've got the Old Elite here, which of course no longer technically exists. We've got Kenny Omega just joining back up with the Elite at Full Gear, and Okada is with the Don Callis family. And Will Ospreay, unfortunately, out with an injury. We haven't seen MJF in a couple months. He's been out shooting a movie, and Swerve was also out injured, but he did just come back at the Full Gear pay-per-view. So, and we got the standard bearer of AEW, Jon Moxley, of course, and Mercedes Moné here. But AEW Origins, right up my alley, because I love pro wrestling, AEW, and comic books. So definitely go check this one out if you can find it. I've seen it online. I wouldn't pay more than a few bucks for it, really. But yeah, AEW Origins, DC Comics. Go check it out. And thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I do post daily comic book reviews. Got playlists on my channel. Feel free to donate to the channel. Links in the description. And go read comics.